and the revolutionary leaders of Mozambique, Samora Machel and Eduardo Mondlane. Michael Stern and the co-founders of Waterford Kamhlaba in 1963. The first students were 16 boys. Over the next couple of years, the school grew exponentially, and with it, support for its ethos and mission. In 1967, King Sobhuza II, the Ingwenyama of Swaziland, granted Waterford School the name Kamhlaba. Waterford played a small yet significant role in the struggle for racial equality in the Southern African region, educating the children of Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Desmond Tutu, Nobel Prize-winning novelist Nadine Gordimer, the first president of Botswana, Sir Therese, and the revolutionary leaders of Mozambique, Samora Machel and Eduardo Mondlane. Michael Stern and the co-founders of Waterford Kamhlaba wanted all students who qualified academically to be able to attend regardless of their ability to pay, making funds for bursaries a necessity.
The scholarship program has got a number of aspects to which are very important. Through the scholarship program, we're able to ensure diversity of the student body within the college. So the students that are attending the college will come from all economic backgrounds. And that's important in terms of integration of students and also part of the learning of students from each other.
WK is not just a school for the elite. WK is not a school that sits on top of a hill that is divided from the rest of community. WK is about everybody having an equal opportunity, finding a home here away from home.
The scholarship program allows students from low-income families and students who would not have access to this type of quality education to come here and better their experience. Without the scholarship program, a lot of our students who benefit our community incredibly well would not be able to be here.
Today, the school has over 600 students representing 60 nationalities. For 60 years, Waterford has proven that young people can look and work beyond the barriers set by governments and politicians. They can create a peaceful, welcoming environment that doesn't judge an individual based on their race, religion, or social-economic status. Most importantly, the school believes in making education a force to unite people, nations, and culture for peace and a sustainable future. The college has a great legacy around diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice.
From the onset, you get a sense that diversity drives us. It moves us. It's one of the pillars that we ascribe to. We are a people driven together by a common mission. We are from different parts of this world, but we come together because we have a greater sense of purpose.
Our diversity allows us to learn together.
The education that is provided here at Waterford is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. An opportunity that is rare not only in the world, but also significantly rare within Africa.
This institution in particular, bringing together people from all over the world, is an incredible way to make education a force to unite people.
And beyond that, it also encourages us to also take pride in who we are. And that is the education that is brought forward by Waterford Kamhlaba.
Through WK's dynamic program, anchored in the United World College education model, young people are empowered and assisted to reach their potential academically, morally, socially, and emotionally. WK is proud to deliver a value-based education that fosters the development of critical skills and the confidence for students to thrive in our world. However, all this costs money, and your proud contribution can change the path of a student's life.
There's a great opportunity for donors of from every part of the world to contribute to the scholarship program. No amount is too small. And obviously no amount is too big either. But it's an opportunity where you are given to make a significant impact on an individual's lives and on lives of people who otherwise would not have such great opportunities that are of global consequence and global impact.
Every United World College will talk a lot about diversity, and whether that's national diversity or racial diversity or gender diversity, but the key thing that we're always striving for is more socioeconomic diversity, because, as many people say, the real differences in the world are not to do with whether you're from Canada or Bangladesh or Algeria or Angola. So it's really important that we continue to foster this socioeconomic diversity, and that's only possible through the generous support of the donors that we've had for many years and the new donors coming on board. And I know for a fact that it's hugely fulfilling and rewarding for the teachers here to work with people from so many different types of backgrounds.
So it's about leveraging on our position here to be able to reach out and provide an opportunity for that less fortunate child out there, and to be able to give them the scholarships. We reach out to our donors, we reach out to partners, we reach out to our members of our community, because through them we are able to effect this and do it in a more meaningful manner.
A significant phrase of learn, earn, return still resonates within Waterford Kamhlaba.
So once our students have gone through the system, they become our alumni. And we expect that they will have learned. And they go out and earn, they work, they impact, they create opportunities for others. They are the ones who can become entrepreneurs. They are the ones who can become researchers. They are the ones who can actually be out there to provide opportunities for others who are coming from them. And therefore the calling is for them to return and give back to the community, because they have also benefited from the same. So it's about coming, finding your space, finding your voice, finding the right skill set, going out, making worthy of those experiences that you have had here, and then returning into the community and being able to give back. That is the essence of an education from WK.
The world is changing so fast and it's so dynamic around us all the time. And it's important that young people are equipped with quality education that will enable them to adapt and to be able them to lead and be citizens of a changing world. And so through education, young people are able to become change leaders in the world around them and for the people around them as well.
Waterford Kamhlaba commits to upholding and advancing this legacy, and also commits to continue providing quality international education through which leaders will be produced who will positively impact the world.
Michael Stern through this lecture series. The 3rd of February 1962 was not just the day Waterford opened its doors. It's the day we became the first multiracial school in Southern Africa, in direct defiance to the apartheid regime. It's the day the school became a light at the top of the hill, inspiring a wave of radical justice. It's the day the school was born of hope, a hope that keeps us pushing for a sustainable future. And it's the day that Michael Stern's vision was born, a vision that continues to live on in the 8 principals and 7,000 plus alumni that have walked on this very hill. I will soon be part of that 7,000 number. I've been here since 2019, and that's 7 years. I know I'll change my mind in a few years, but right now I can't wait to be an alum. 7 years means I've seen 3 principals at Waterford, Mr. Larry, Miss Angoy, and now Mrs. Otula. Firsthand, I've seen how the vision, the culture, and the ethos of the school has succeeded and transformed with each era. That's exactly what this year's lecture, delivered by the lovely Mrs. Therese will reveal. The theme for this year's talk is Michael Stern, a vision is born, the vision lives on. How do we as a school continue to be drivers of change? How do we continue to be Kamhlaba, to continue to live the vision, and be drivers of change and justice in Africa and around the world like we were 62 years ago? One of the first major changes to Stern's vision was around gender. In 1963, when Waterford opened its doors, it did so to 16 boys. But by 1966, the school had welcomed its first female student, Veronica Yonka Gedge. Don't be mistaken at all. It was incredibly hard for Stern to change his vision. So hard, in fact, that he nicknamed Veronica Fred, because he could not believe he had let a girl into an all-boys institution. But because of this transformation in the vision, because he realized he needed to expand, I, also a girl, can speak to you here today. Our current principal, Mrs. Jackie Otula, is a pioneer in her own right, just like Veronica. She's the first African female principal of Waterford who has been enacting a wave of change since 2023. Please help me welcome to the stage Principal Otula.
Thank you. Yep, a tall woman. Sanibonani? Sanibonani? Lovely. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, WK community and friends of Waterford Kamhlaba, from wherever you are joining us, whether through the web or here in person. Thank you very much for coming and feel most welcome. It is an honor to stand before you today as we reflect on the power of vision. Not just the vision that was born by our founding principal, Michael Stan, but the vision that continues to live and inspire us all. As we commemorate WK's birthday, as you've heard Shona say today, we celebrate not just the present, but the foundation upon which WK stands. It is a privilege to gather here to honor the vision, determination, and unwavering commitment of those who paved the way for this amazing institution. As we reflect on the history of our school, we are reminded that it was not built on bricks and mortar alone. Rather, it was built on dreams and aspirations of visionary leaders who sought to create an environment of growth, an environment of learning, and an environment of opportunity, equal opportunity. Our principals, whose tireless efforts have laid the foundation and progress of this school, knew that education is not merely about imparting knowledge. Rather, it's about creating enabling spaces and opportunities for students to come and live together and to thrive. A vision, in its truest sense, is not merely a dream or a distant hope. It is a spark that ignites change, that guides us forward even when the road seems unclear. And the story of our school, of this community, of our journey, is one that was started with a bold vision. A vision that has hopefully stood the test of time, transcending 6 decades and carried through 8 principals and counting. I would like to sincerely thank Madame Therese Nje, she's seated right over there, who will enlighten us this evening as she narrates the journey of this vision. Merci, Madame. When Michael Stan first took on the role of leader here, he did not come with a simple plan or just a list of goals. Michael came with a vision of empowerment, a progressive and a transformative one, where the impossible became possible. And I hope that through Madame Therese's lecture this evening, you might appreciate the visionary leadership of WK, who have envisioned a community where every individual, regardless of their background or circumstance, can thrive out here on this amazing hill. It is easy to think of a vision as something that exists in the future, a far-off ideal we can only hope to reach. But over time, WK has shown us that a true vision is not just about what's ahead. It is about what we do in the present moment to make that future a reality. I'd like to honor my predecessors. Their commitment to our community, their passion for education, and their dedication to creating a nurturing environment for each student have turned that vision into something tangible, something that lives in every classroom, in every hallway, in every residence, and something that we are particularly proud of. Their commitment to our community and their passion, as I have said, have turned that vision into something tangible, something that we are incredibly proud of. The vision they began with is no longer just their own. It is now our collective journey.
We owe so much to those who came before us, and it is our responsibility to honor their memory by continuing the work that they began. To our students, the vision lives on through you. You are the future leaders and the innovators and the change makers. Every challenge you face, every success you achieve is part of this larger vision, one that will continue to succeed, to evolve, and to grow with each one of you. WK has become a place where every student is encouraged to explore their potential, challenge themselves, and grow. And as UWCs, you must not settle for less. You step up, you step forward, and you boldly prove that what others might consider impossible, you make possible. What others might do ordinarily, you do extraordinarily well. You live the vision. To the staff, the vision lives on through your dedication and unwavering commitment. The work you do does not just impact today. It shapes the tomorrow we are all striving for. And in closing, let us remember that every vision, no matter how grand, no matter how small, begins with a single step. It is important that we always remember this. It begins with a deep-seated faith, but the true measure of a vision's greatness is not how it starts, but how it endures. Our vision, that which is born by our principles, is alive today, and it will live on tomorrow and beyond, shaping the hearts and minds of all who enter Waterford Kamhlaba. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to sit back and experience the journey of WK's 6 decades of light and love, as narrated by Therese. Therese Nje. Merci, madame. Thank you very much. Siyabonga kakhulu. I wish you a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful address, Principal Otula. So my favorite part of the academic year here at Waterford is term 1. After everyone leaves at the end of term 3 and the school buries its head in its books, it's so beautiful to see the school become so alive again. And that's exactly how this next performance is going to make you feel alive. May we please have a round of applause for the marimba piece by our Zimbabwean students. Thank you so much for that amazing performance. So, as mentioned before, our main speaker this evening is Mrs. Therese. I had Mrs. Nje as my French teacher in Form 1 and 2. Unfortunately, my love for French died in Form 2, but my love for Mrs. Nje did not. Hailing from Cameroon, she's been an avid member of the Waterford community since 2018, teaching French, life skills, and community service. Even though I highly doubt that my C's in French inspired anything in Mrs. Nje, it was actually her Form 2 class of 2024 that managed to inspire this talk. Their curiosity on who Michael Stern was, what was his vision and his goals, sent her down a research rabbit hole and revealed to her how rich our history here at Kamhlaba is. How he managed to enact such a small yet impactful change set off a fire in her to give this talk, to remind us of our mission to transform the school and the world we call home. Let's welcome with a round of applause the speaker for this year's Michael Stern Lecture, Mrs. Therese Nje.
Sanbonani, Ninjani. Okay. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Waterford, our online friends, we thank you all for being here this evening to listen to this lecture. Let me quickly start with a disclaimer. All what I'm going to say here was sourced from our WK Museum, from our archives, the school archives, from friends, both abroad and at school, to inspire this talk. So, Michael Stern, a vision is born, the vision lives on. Let's just start with picturing this image. Is that me? Are we good? Okay. Individuals come and go, individuals die, but the community lives on. Michael Stern may not be with us in flesh today, but this community ensures his memory survives. Through his vision, through his dream, his burning desire to ensure that education is accessed by all is something that we're realizing today. Let's start by just imagining we're in the 50s. The continent is Africa. The period is colonialism. The color, black people, black symbolizing evil, illiteracy, backwardness, women, children as ahead, not seen. We have different forms of government in the continent. In the rest of Africa, there's colonialism happening. In Mozambique, the Portuguese are the masters. In neighboring South Africa, apartheid is raging havoc. And in Swaziland, it's a protectorate monarchy. In South Africa, during the apartheid period, in the 1950s, the Group Areas Act is passed. This was a fundamental apartheid law that enforced residential and business segregation, including people, colored, Indians, Africans, to move from their homes into homelands that were reserved for them through the act. Hendrik Verwoerd was prime minister in South Africa from 1958 to 1966. And prior to becoming prime minister, he made this notorious statement about black education as a fitting justification to the Bantu Education Act of 1953. He said, "There is no place for the Bantu in the European community above the level of certain forms of labor. What is the use of teaching the Bantu child mathematics when it cannot use it in practice?" It is against this backdrop that we're introduced to Father Trevor Huddleston, who is heading the Rosettenville Church Mission in Johannesburg, South Africa. He runs a secondary mission for boys, African boys to be precise, called St. Peter's. And this was in the Diocese of Johannesburg. In 1954, Rosettenville, through the Group Areas Act, is declared a white residential area. This implies that the blacks, the Indians, the coloreds have to move from Rosettenville. The present head of the school at the time of St. Peter's decides to resign, and the school risks staying without a head in its final year of closure. Father Huddleston sends out an emotional plea to the UK diocese. Michael Stern decides to respond immediately. And Father Huddleston, these are his letters, so you might not be able to read, but he says, I quote, "I believe it is a direct answer to prayer. We need you very much indeed, and just as soon as you can come. You would be doing a tremendous service in these critical days, and I have no doubt you would find a permanent job either in our community, in South Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, or elsewhere." His tone in this letter, "We need you," a tremendous service with no prospect of a permanent job, requires a certain type of person to accept such an assignment. In the United Kingdom, Stern felt a calling from teaching the privileged children of well-to-do parents to devote his attention to the underprivileged sections of society. So, this was certainly a challenge he felt he was willing to take on. Upon receipt of the letter, so there was an interchange of letters between Michael Stern and Father Huddleston. So upon receipt of this, the acceptance letter from Michael Stern, Father Huddleston writes back to Stern with a tone filled with gratitude and blessings. Again, you won't be able to read that, but he says, I do want you to know how truly and deeply grateful we are for this most generous and bold decision. Coming just now, when the future is so uncertain, has helped very greatly to stiffen the morale of the school. I hope and pray you will not regret it. And in the same letter filled with urgency and plea, he adds, I really am asking you to make an act of faith, resign your previous job, and get here as soon as you can. I am sure you are the man for us. In haste, Trevor Huddleston. And Michael Stern comes to South Africa. So he arrives in South Africa in 1955 and closes St. Peter's, the all-black boys' school, in 1956. The diocese who owns the land decides to convert the buildings to be suitable for European boys. So now we have a new school with a new name, St. Martin's, with the same head, Michael Stern, still boys, but with a difference, the color of the skin. Michael heads the school from 1958 till 1961. All the while, he was hoping and praying that one day the school opens its doors to boys from all communities. His only achievement during those 5 years was accepting the sons of the Japanese ambassador to the school. These 5 years were instrumental in allowing him to conceive a fantasy. Boys of all colors can study together. Night after night, this creative discontent to work with students based on color, not merit, haunted him like a ghost. Like Elle Nightingale said, Elle Nightingale was the most listened to broadcaster in the broadcasting world in the US in the 60s. And he says something about dreams and visions. He says, you know, this great dream, we all have those dreams we have at night, big dreams. This big, surging, dynamic thing, invisible to all the world, except to the person that holds it, is responsible for every great advancement of man. During those 5 years, night and day, he conceived, reviewed, refined his vision. He refined a new path for himself. He did not have to fight the education system, nor the status quo. He was way ahead of his time. And he foreshadowed what Mandela had to say years later. In his book, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela says, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. With this idea, Michael Stern chose to be a pathfinder, a trailblazer, to create a new path. And in the words of the famous engineer, Buckminster Fuller, he was an engineer, so he dealt with models. And he had this to say, he says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. At this point, Michael Stern, he was not there to fight the apartheid system. That was not his idea. But the dream was heavily pregnant. He was about to give birth. He had conceived the dream. It was no longer a fantasy. He had it, and he just had to birth the dream. So he was willing to pay the price for his ideal. He was willing to sacrifice everything to ensure his baby survives and thrives. In his resignation letter from St. Martin's, he writes, the birth of St. Martin's are 5 happy years for me, which I will not for the world have missed, and during which I have learned far more than I have taught, and I am grateful. My eyes are fixed on something ahead, an experiment which the law forbids in the Republic. In Swaziland, we can start a small school that is open to all boys on merit, and to me, that is the sine qua non of true education. This is a young man who may look like a tramp on the streets, in his late 30s, but within him were ideas of a billionaire. With this letter, he moved from his fantasy stage to action. Stern, we remember, had been exposed to varied educational experiences. He taught white privileged kids in the UK, he taught white underprivileged kids in the UK, he taught black kids in Africa, he taught white privileged kids in Africa. So he had all those experiences to his advantage, and which is why he thought he could come up with an education which is different from what society expected. So his choice of words here is small school. It suggests modesty, just modesty and humility. He didn't want to say a big school. He didn't want a big school because he had this idea of what he was looking for. So he talks of merit. Merit here should not be construed as academic merit or financial merit. That's not what he was out for. He had a prototype. In his dream, he had an avatar of a student that he was looking for in his school. And for him, he had conceived the vision, the mission, the emblem, the motto. Everything was ready for his school to start. So let's see the vision in action. What drives a man? Is there an invisible hand, an inexplicable force, which pulls a man from north to south to accomplish a mission, a purpose, a dream? Are we predestined, or do we design our destinies? I believe it is a melting pot, but it ultimately boils down to our decisions and our choices, and how much sacrifice we are willing to make, each one of us. And so, in 1963, armed with his decision, he decides to start the school. There was no pomp, there was no noise, no ceremony. The school opened its doors with 16 boys, with a racial quota of 50% white, 25% black, and 25% other races, Indians, coloreds. So that was a school. Waterford School, as it was called, was the first multiracial school in the Southern African continent, or Southern African part of the world, to open its doors to young people of all colors. Whenever I look at this place, I throw my imagination back to the 60s to imagine what the area looked like. A natural setting with no tarred roads, with only 3 rendezvous. And when I compare that to what we enjoy today as a school, I'm sure we all agree that Michael Stern was a trailblazer. There's this African proverb by Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka was an African playwright, poet, and an activist, and very strong African identity. And he said, a tiger does not shout its tigritude, it acts. Michael Stern was not a big man in stature. He was not a loud speaker, but he possessed determination, courage, and drive. So, what was the secret behind the vision? I've simplified it down to 3 things. His vision and who he attracted to himself, his values, and his successors as torchbearers and their uniqueness, the uniqueness each one brought to ensure that the vision lives on. Successful people have historically aligned themselves with good people, whom they call friends. A friend believes in a cause. A friend sticks out when their friend is having a rough time. A friend brings their friends to support their friend. So good friends form good networks. Michael Stern was very strategic about his partnerships and friendships. He was a selfless man who did not care who got the glory, as long as the idea advanced his vision. Apart from his staff members, he allied himself with 3 friends key to realizing the vision. For business people, I believe you know that for any business to survive, there are just 4 departments to make it work. And Sten understood that really well. I usually say it's the head, the hands, and the feet, and the money. So, yeah, without money, there will be no business. So Stern was the head. He was a visionary. He brought the ideas. But he did not have the money. But he allied himself with Christopher Newton Thompson, who roped in Oppenheimer, who was the chairman of Anglo-American at the time. Oppenheimer was the chairman, so he had the money. Now, Newton Thompson had to convince Oppenheimer that Michael Stern was a person to invest in, and Waterford was the venture to invest in. And he succeeded. So, Oppenheimer was able to give the money. But now, we needed a production person. And then, that's when we have Pancho Gage in the picture. Pancho Gage was the production, the hands. He was an architect, and a famous one for that matter. And when he came and saw the area, this was Waterford. He looked and he said this to, he turned to Sten and he said, "We'll give your school an identity with the rocky supremacy of the hills." So, Gage designed and supervised construction without ever accepting a dime for his time and effort. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, with our unique, imposing structures here at Waterford, I'm sure you all agree with me that Mr. Gage did not fail us. In fact, he over-delivered. Now, heading Waterford. Michael Stern was founder and head of Waterford for 10 years. As founding principal, these were the political years, as we've said. It was apartheid years. It was not an easy time. He'd left South Africa to come to Swaziland. Michael Stern was an idealist and a very strategic person. So he put everything in place, like we said. And he enshrined his vision around 4 key attributes. He says, Waterford School will be open for boys near Mbabane, Swaziland in January. The aim of the school will be to provide a first-class education on a Christian foundation for boys of all races, creeds, and faith. The school will be kept small to ensure the highest academic standards and successful social relations. And to recognize the enormous privilege which would be associated with attending such a school, it would be vital that those who are privileged would move out into the local community to do everything possible to support and develop it. So, we see here he already has his vision. He knows what he's looking for, the type of boys, what they're going to do as service. They have to go down to the local community and support. He was also driven by 3 drivers of change. Our emblem as a school is a phoenix, and that was conceived by him and designed by Pedro Gage, Pancho's son. He believed the phoenix was fitting for the school because he saw it as rising. We know the phoenix, that mythical bird, which is believed to live 500 years, and it dies and it burns from its ashes to rise again. So that's what Stern chose as the emblem. And for him, the idea was that Waterford will rise from the ashes of St. Peter's and St. Martin's, his previous schools. He was also inspired by the words of Edmund Burke, who was an English politician, who said, "Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he felt he could do only a little." In times of doubt and confusion, We look up as a school to the phoenix because we believe we always rise as a school. And that it comes from the vision that Stern had for us. Stern's vision was based on justice and fairness and love for our fellow human being. During these first 10 years, Waterford School, like water cutting through a rock, endured storms, financial, social storms, political storms. Money was tight, and they were running under a shoestring budget. There was a saying at the time, it was the 11th hour. And they always came through, somehow. So, I would say the first teachers at the school were idealists. They had to buy into the ideal, and they made it work. The school overcame political challenges, and I'll share two of those challenges that the school overcame. In the first year of its founding in 1963, the South African government put border posts on the Swaziland border, probably with the intention of frustrating or providing maximum inconvenience to parents enrolling their children here at Waterford. Prior to that, there was no border. So parents, local parents, now found it a bit challenging to travel because they were scared that the kids could be detained or the passports would be held back. So there was a bit of inconvenience. And that was probably a result of Waterford School. But the second example, which is more interesting, was in 1967, 5 years into the school. In 1967, the South African government placed direct pressure on the then Ingwenyama King Sobhuza of Swaziland. The South African government demanded the king to close the school. Now, Swaziland was a British protectorate. So, what did King Sobhuza do? As father of the nation, he drove up the hill, and after observing firsthand what the school stood for and what it was all about, instead of closing the school down, he endorsed the legitimacy of the child and gave it a Swazi name, a Swazi identity, Kamhlaba. Listen to how Sobhuza described Kamhlaba. Wherever you are in this world, the earth does not distinguish who you are. You live in it, and it does not try to ostracize you or show difference to what you are. This is the meaning of Kamhlaba. We are Kamhlaba, all of one world. And so, Waterford survived. But now, downtown, the school survived. The school endured social pressure still. Whenever Michael Stern went down, there would be people making degrading comments about the school, laughing at the school. But he was not one to back off. If people said things that were not aligned to his values, or they said demeaning things about privilege or the school, he fought back, literally fighting. And there were times when there were reports that he was actually beaten up. But he knew what he was looking for. And when I read about that, I understand that to me, that is what being an anti-racist would look like. He took action. Michael Stern was a man larger than life. He was way ahead of his time. He pioneered the concept of inclusive education, where students from diverse backgrounds could eat, discuss, shower, and grow together as children, irrespective of their race, their creed, or their socioeconomic background. He envisioned a school where any child with promise and potential could attain, because he believed that any child can do well and that each child should be assisted to reach their potential. His first community service in 1963 was engineering, building, and forestry. The students dug drains, they whitewashed walls, they cut and sawed firewood. After 63 years of, after 10 years of glorious service, Michael Stern backed down, and Athol Jennings became the second principal of the school. And he also headed the school for 10 years. Jennings's reign was centered around internationalism. Waterford School had become a United World College, a friend of the United World College in 1972 during Stern's era. But in 1981, Waterford was admitted as the fourth member of the United World Colleges worldwide. Mr. Jennings then had the responsibility of aligning the school with the United World College mission, values of intercultural understanding and peace. He increased scholarships for economically challenged students, ensuring that Stern's vision of access to education, equality for all, regardless of financial means, continues. He also enhanced the curriculum to incorporate teachings on social justice and international understanding aimed at broadening students' perspectives on global issues of equity. After 10 glorious years, Richard Errington became the third principal of the school. He also ruled the school for 10 years. He was a great choice to the Waterford community, and he was at the school as a geography teacher for 14 years before becoming the head. He pushed against religion. He was more secular, a bit left-wing, socialist type of person. And the international student body of Waterford expanded during this era to ensure students from conflict regions like Mozambique and Angola have access to benefit from Waterford's inclusive education. With the dismantling of apartheid in South Africa, he focused on building a sense of global citizenship among students, instilling values of equity and, again, social justice. He expanded the program, the scholarship program, to ensure that children, ANC partners, international human rights organizations could bring their kids to Waterford. So, as Southern Africa was undergoing all this transformation, Waterford Kamhlaba remained the institution of choice for justice and inclusion. Of note during that time was a visit to the school of Prince Charles, now King Charles, and King Swati of Eswatini in 1987. So that was a highlight for the school because, again, it was just reinforcing that what Waterford was doing was noticed. Richard Errington's love for football is something we need to mention because he was instrumental in ensuring that football becomes recognized in Swaziland as a country, so beyond Waterford. And he ensured that his wife, Enid, whom we just saw, that's the wife, she was a school nurse, and this was during the AIDS pandemic, if you remember our history. And she tirelessly helped the community, the Swazi community, to educate them on the impact of HIV, how to protect oneself. So they were tireless in doing that in the community. And this couple was actually described as tireless fundraisers for building scholarship for Black South African students from the townships. After 10 years, we had Paul McDermott. So he ruled Waterford from 1995 to 1998. He was more on reinforcing the idea of tolerance. To quote his words, he couldn't stand intolerance and racial injustice. He focused on the bursary program also, and like his predecessors, he did not turn down any child on merit, any child who deserved to be in the school but could not afford it. So he accepted students. And during this period, this is 1995, this is when Nelson Mandela and Queen Noor of Jordan became joint presidents of the UWC movement at the time. If we go out in behind the library, we'll see a statue of Nelson Mandela, which was actually designed and made by one of our students. And the idea was for him to put it there to ensure, to talk about the power of freedom over ignorance. And for him, the idea is you should stop and really look and reflect on the power of freedom. After Paul McDermott, we had Lawrence Norder. Lawrence Norder, I'll describe him as the idealist. He was all about fighting socio-economic diversity at all costs. Norder was our longest-serving principal. He served Waterford for 12 years, and he was also the longest-serving principal of the UWC movement. He was committed to fostering compassionate global citizens and promoting educational equality worldwide. In UWC language, we call that deliberate diversity. He launched educational programs which promoted gender equity, ensuring girls' participation in leadership and STEM subjects. In 2006, Lawrence Norder was invited by the government of Mozambique for the inauguration of a monument. And there he was introduced to the President Gubuza, who said, "I want it known that it was because of Waterford Kamhlaba's Mozambican graduates that Frelimo had chosen to remain a non-racial liberation movement. Clearly, our alum in Moz were able to demonstrate and persuade that skin color was not to be taken as a primary determinant of one's invitation to contribute to the liberation struggle." Norder expanded community service and created opportunities for students to engage directly in social justice initiatives within Swaziland and beyond. So Waterford now positioned itself as a leader in advancing the areas of gender and economic inclusion. In 2000, Shelby Davis, we'll talk about him later, becomes also patron of the UWC movement, and that expanded the vision Stern had for the school. After Norder, we had Stephen Lowry, the 6th principal of the school. He headed the school for 7 years, and I'll describe Stephen Lowry as a realist. For him, business must be kept afloat. Stephen Lowry was committed to continuing the scholarship program at Waterford so that the poor and oppressed of Africa should get an opportunity to get professional degrees and benefit from a Davis Scholarship. With a Davis Scholarship, these students will be able to contribute in uplifting their families, their communities, and their continent. He believed in growing people to be inspired to make a difference. And this impacted on how he timetabled community service at the school, which, if we remember, Stern's 4th attribute was all about service. He also moved privileged, moving privileged children out into the community to serve. During Lowry's time, this was a COVID year, so if you remember, the global economic landscape was changing rapidly. So it was COVID, it was LGBT, the movements, the Black Lives Matter movement. And during COVID, the school was running on survival mode. It was online teaching and learning, and Lowry ensured that every child, especially those who were not privileged to have a laptop, Wi-Fi access, every child got a laptop at home they got Wi-Fi access, and learning was kept afloat. The students were present for class, the teachers were paid well, and business continued as usual. He also launched programs aimed at promoting inclusion like LGBTQ+, ensuring Waterford was a safe and supportive environment. He addressed mental health and well-being issues for all students. After Lowry, we now have our first female principal, Patricia Angoy. I'll describe her as welcoming the Waterford community after COVID. After a grueling interview, Waterford style, for those who've been to Waterford, they can feel what the interview feels like. After a grueling interview, after 58 years of white male-dominated leadership, after 9 months of online teaching and learning, Waterford welcomed its first female principal and a woman of color. This was a test for our institution. Meeting face-to-face after 9 months of living apart, we were learning to be humans again. We were transitioning from staying at home to talking to people using sanitizers and masks, social distancing. Everyone was suspicious of the next person, so nobody wanted to die. And this is where Mrs. Angoy comes in to the continent and has to manage all this. Her time saw a rise in mental health issues because we all know what happened during COVID, and coupled with protests in the country at the time. She expanded the diversity efforts to include climate justice and sustainability. She strengthened the school scholarship programs, particularly from conflict zones and marginalized communities like Mpaka. She implemented initiatives to promote racial and cultural understanding, including student-led DJ forums and community discussions that focused on contemporary issues like racism and inequality. And then we have Principal Otula from 2023. I describe her as empowerment and refocusing the vision. Principal Otula is the first African woman to head an international institution on a journey of empowerment. And she's refocusing Waterford Kamhlaba systems and structures. Through courageous leadership and an unwavering commitment to diversity, Jackie Otula has succeeded in cultivating a culture of belonging, enabling all students to thrive. As a present torchbearer of STEM's vision, she has implemented initiatives aimed at ensuring a lasting legacy in all the different areas of the school, from finance to pastoral to maintenance and academics. Through her leadership rooted in compassion and inclusivity, Jackie's influence extends far beyond the school. Her leadership is shaping the next generation of global leaders who will go on to make an impact, not only in Africa, but across the world. She's a beacon of hope and an inspiration to other girls from the continent. Through her relentless commitment to equity, her passion for sustainable living, and her deep belief in education's transformative power, Jackie Otula has become a pivotal figure in education. With the principals done, we just want to see how this vision lives on and keeps evolving. So with the passage of time, we can see that the vision has clearly evolved to ensure the school stays relevant with the times. This is where we are introduced to another person who has to ensure that the vision continues, that the vision thrives. We remember Harry Oppenheimer was STEM's financial guy, but now Shelby Davis comes in to expand the vision by investing in the students. And Shelby's idea was simple. He said, if you could bring thousands of talented people from every corner of the globe to the US colleges and universities, you could create international understanding and change the world. Shelby embodies what we'll call a UWC education. He's a philanthropist, he's an activist for education, or the power of education to transform minds and lives. During our assembly, in 2018, Shelby Davis visited our school. And during the school assembly, he said something that's interesting. He told the students here that, I hit the jackpot investing in you. You have winning habits. It is a 10-to-1 chance to get into Waterford Kamhlaba. And when you get a diploma, it's another 10-to-1 chance to be accepted in a US university. So I'm investing in you because you have winning habits. My bet is you are that pebble that makes a ripple in the world. You have talents that are unique to make the world a better place. No matter where you are, in your community, your job, your family, whatever field you are in, we need more people like you. We need happiness around UWC to be spread around the world. So his contributions have significantly expanded access to a UWC education for students worldwide and has given our graduates a lifeline. It is not because of people who are in the institution, but because of people who come into an institution that makes a difference. Not every student who comes to Waterford is privileged, but every student who leaves Waterford is privileged because of the type of education they get and because they get an IB diploma. The IB diploma is ranked among the top diplomas in the world for secondary education. And with the IB diploma, they get a ticket into a good university if the parents cannot afford a university education. So that is a guarantee. And I believe Sten wanted Waterford to focus on African students and Shelby on African graduates. These people understood that giving fish was not enough, but showing young people how to fish would reap endless rewards. Our graduates are making significant contributions around the world. Some make a direct contribution in the continent, while others do so from elsewhere. Like Michael Stern, no matter our position in life, we can all speak up for our continent. We can defend the interests of our continent. For example, at our places of work, whether in our classrooms, at the World Bank, in our offices, we could espouse policies that favor the global South. And in the words of Stephen Lowry, he said, if our graduates continue to only act in the interests of the global North, then we have failed as an institution. Michael Stern may not be the savior of all Black people, but his vision has enabled any child who has experienced learning the Waterford Kamhlaba way to dream and become anything they truly want to become. We saw our marimbas just now. I felt like dancing when they were. So, like a seed planted on fertile soil, every child that has gone through this institution is making a humongous impact in their community. Like the African baobab, Waterford Kamhlaba stands tall and sturdy. Like the phoenix, it rises, and it continues to rise. Sten's vision is a humbling reminder to all of us that what the mind of man can conceive and believe, the mind of man can achieve. During his first decade of the school, he positioned Waterford as a beacon of racial equality, making it a symbol of resistance and a champion of social justice. His vision has been expansive because as a visionary, he laid a solid foundation, but never prescribed to his successors how they were to lead. By allowing each head to express their uniqueness, Waterford Kamhlaba keeps enjoying the success that we read about and see year in, year out. Stern's message to the graduating class in 1967 is something we can constantly refer to keep this vision even brighter. He said to his students, "You will meet evil, your own and the world's. And unless you have allowed all that is best in yourselves and in your homes and in Waterford to be completely obscured by time and inclination, you will recognize it for what it is. And what will you then do about it? What will be your action and your attitude? As I see it," he continues, "we all have 3 actions open to us, and only 3. 1, we can join it. 2, we can keep silent and say nothing. 3, we can speak out and act against it." The last often means unpopularity, sometimes danger, and seldom obvious success. More probably misunderstanding. But you won't regret it if you act from the right motives. Above all, he continues, please don't keep silent. I see each one of you as capable of making a very real contribution to the sum total of human happiness in the world. As a United World College, we focus on peace. But for Waterford Kamhlaba, a uniquely elitist school in the Southern Hemisphere, peace should not be our end goal. We need to keep expanding this vision and speak up on social issues that matter to us as a global South. We need to amplify our voices against racial oppression, Black exploitation, xenophobia, child trafficking, economic injustice, gender-based violence. We should be about African empowerment and tackling the question of justice in the world. We should be deliberate about exposing our students to the realities of Africa, the poor and the oppressed. We can use education as a tool for justice and equality. We can equalize society through education. So it is absolutely essential that we expand our scholarship program so that the poor and oppressed get an opportunity to uplift their situation. Michael Stern, a trailblazer, a pathfinder, a visionary, deafened to the naysayers, the jeerers, the pessimists, he followed his heart. He was blinded to his circumstances and environment and pursued his ideal. Michael Stern may not have won the Nobel Prize. He may not have received knighthood from the Queen of England, but to us in this tiny kingdom, he is a savior. The saying, to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world, aptly describes Michael Stern. As a community, we continue to thank Dr. Michael Alexander Stern as being the man for us. To Miranda and Hughes, Michael Stern's kids, children, we say thank you. To Michael Jarvis and all our friends, we are grateful for all the support. To our heads, like a blacksmith, you have each given your best to ensure that this extraordinary legacy lives on. And for that, we thank you. To all our friends and alum, we implore you to keep digging into your pockets, to keep opening your checkbooks, so that one more child from an economically challenging circumstance can enjoy the privilege of a Waterford education and go out there to carve their own version of Stern's vision. I challenge us all to keep this vision burning by helping one child to be that pebble that ripples and moves the whole ocean shoreline. Let's all keep this vision alive. And with those words, I thank you. Yeah. Okay. Should I please?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nje, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation. I think we can all agree that was a lot of valuable information, but luckily we will have a short panel of Waterfordians to help us unpack these ideas further and give us a student's perspective on Michael Stern's vision. Now, instead of one brilliant mind, we'll have several. They said I should call a dinosaur, but I think that's a bit rude, was a survivor. He was at Waterford for 7 years in the 60s after his parents became refugees of the apartheid rule. He was actually a student here the year Michael Stern resigned in 1973. After graduation, he taught in a few Swazi schools before returning to Waterford, where he has been teaching environmental sciences and theory of knowledge since 2001. Please may we welcome to the stage Mr. Quinton Reisman. Next, I'd like to introduce someone who loved Waterford so much that she's been back 3 times. After graduating in the 90s, she came back as a teacher in 2005 to 2013, before returning as our Deputy Principal for Academics in 2022. During her time at Waterford, she was the it girl. She was captain of the hockey team and held the Waterford girls 100-meter record for years. Let's give a warm welcome to our Deputy Principal Pastoral, Mrs. Lisa Semelane. Our next panelist ruled the theatre stage during their time at Waterford. She spent most of her time in the theatre and was part of a group of students who took a production all the way to Gaborone and the prestigious Makanda Arts Film Festival. After graduating in 2009, she studied theatre and anthropology at UCT and then rejoined the Waterford community this year, teaching English and theory of knowledge. She's currently looking for ways to exit her echo chamber on TikTok, so if you have any advice for them and me, please let us know. Please give a round of applause for Miss Moya Lofa. And last, but certainly not least, we have the first resident of E11 in Elangeni. She made the most of her IB2 in 2011, hanging out with her best friends on the side of the mountain, looking down at the beautiful view, pretending her deadlines didn't exist. After graduation, she attended Oklahoma University and returned as a staff member in 2019. Her favorite thing to do is explore coffee shops, with coffee being a vice that she picked up during IB deadline season, like so many IB victims before and after her. Please give a warm welcome to our final panelist, Ms. Nosimilo Kumalo. as I think we can all agree, that was a really insightful talk. My first question for the panel is, what aspect of Michael Stern's vision was most prevalent in your era, and what aspect do you think is most prevalent now?
Oh, wow, okay. Right, well, this question is a little bit difficult for me because just as a kind of a living fossil, my era was the Michael Stern era. He left the year I left. So I've had to kind of rephrase this and try to think, okay, so I was there in the presence of the vision, and what made the most impression on me, rather than to say what aspect was actually the most prevalent. So I think one of the things that kind of stands out to me is Michael Stern's idea that you can get a sense of integrity and respect in anybody. So to illustrate this, for starters, our cubies were never locked. We had no keys. And all our worldly goods were there. If someone wanted to take them, they could have. But I must say, as a student, I never really had a problem with that, and cannot actually remember losing anything. And a second thing that kind of illustrates this is that in 1972 or 3, the school rules covered one typewritten sheet. I think it was typed on both sides. And that was the school rules. And in those rules, it actually says this set of rules has been deliberately kept short to give the students as much latitude as possible. In other words, there was an assumption of integrity that was built into the rules and that was assumed of every student. How to push this, well, I don't know, that was question one. Okay. The second thing is that it was an idea of leadership by example. And again, it's very easy to say that. We all say it's always said that we should lead by example. I was with Michael Stern's service group for a couple of terms. And at that time, a lot of the service, or nearly all of it, was in and around the school. And while he worked harder than any of us, actually doing it, he pushed the wheelbarrows. Yeah, we just had to do the same. He set the bar and we followed it. Another one that would come to mind on that line is that he coached the school hockey team. He never reffed. He always gave that job to someone else, and he played. And he was quite wild. He had incredible energy. So those are just two of the things of his vision that kind of come to my mind from that time.
And I also just want to say, I think that idea of service is embodied in you as well, Mr. Reisman, because we always see you out there, whether it's making composting toilets or in the nature reserve. Yeah, I think you also lead through service, so I think it's something that's stayed with you. So I have had the privilege of existing under 6 out of the 8 principals. So Mr. Iington was the principal for most of my time here as a student, and Mr. McDermott came in my last year, so we overlapped very briefly. Lawrence Nodder gave me my first teaching job here. And then Stephen Lowry came in just towards the end of my time. And then Patricia Angoy employed me as deputy principal for academics. And now I have the privilege of working with Jackie Otula. So I think, yeah, I've seen a lot of those and transitions, and I think there are two things for me, and one of them actually builds on what Mr. Reisman was talking about, but I think service and diversity, I think, are the two things that really have sort of sustained or had a sustained presence during my different times here at Waterford. So I'll talk first about diversity. So my first roommate when I was a student in Annex was Chimwemwe Lungu from Malawi. And then when I would go home, I was a weekly boarder, and when I would go home on the weekend, my mum's sitting room would be filled with a gaggle of girls from Uganda, Botswana, South Africa, Zambia, Tanzania, Malawi, and of course Eswatini. And I think now we all still have a class of 95 WhatsApp group that we connect on to celebrate joys when they happen, or to come together to pause for a moment in memory of those we've lost along the way. And that's happened a couple of times recently. So the second thing is, as Mr. Reisman spoke about, was service. And I think one thing that I always say about my time at Waterford is that it really built in me a sense of social responsibility. So as a student in Form 5, I did Ward 8, where we would go down to the government hospital once a week and take the orphaned and abandoned children who lived there on a full-time basis out to the park, to the hot springs, or bring them up to campus just to run around on the field. And then when I came back as a teacher in 2006, at that time, that also was my community service. And I think one of my favorite memories is when we, under the leadership of Mrs. Nodder, we took a bus load of our students and the kids from Ward 8. Mrs. Nodder worked miracles and got everybody passports, and we went to the beach and we went to St. Lucia, and I think that's one experience I will never forget. And now, every week, I still go down to the government hospital, this time with IB1s to work in the pharmacy and assist with packing pills and writing on pill packets. So I think community service, or that idea of service, has very much shaped who I am and how I see my place in the world. Over to you, Moya.
Hi, everybody. I know this is for later on in the conversation, but I just want to say, having seen the history tonight and the leadership over the years, I'm so appreciative to work with leadership that is finally representative of this continent and the context that we find ourselves in. And so I'm very excited about that and moving forward. Okay, now to go back into the past. I think what stood out for me the most about Michael Stern is this idea of moving away from passive peace to active peace. I think that in many ways, passive peace is something where we don't really want to have a hard conversation. We don't really want to challenge the status quo, so we kind of sit with the discomfort and we betray ourselves, or we betray the communities that we belong to. So I think what's really exciting is that over the years there's been really a clear vision of moving towards a more active peace. And the active peace means having really hard conversations that are uncomfortable, that sometimes push against the grain, that kind of make us question our own biases and our own belief systems. And when I was here, so I was here for quite a long time, 18 years, but I'll speak more about kind of the later years that I was here, so kind of 2007 to 2009. There was a lot happening in the world. Just next door, my home country, we had the really awful xenophobic attacks in 2008. And then on the other side of the spectrum, Barack Obama was elected, and that was kind of ushered in an era of, I guess, exceptional hope and change and shifts in our world, which I suppose is very pertinent to think about in the current political context. So we were kind of like in an amalgam of things that were difficult, things that were joyful, things that brought us hope. And I think that a space like Waterford is really precious in allowing us to sit with both maybe the fear, maybe the challenges, but also the hope. And it does this in a very interesting way, in that like a part of it is almost natural, I guess, if I can use that word, in that we come together in a diverse way, and there are things that kind of happen organically, which are really beautiful. Like Lisa was mentioning, we sit with people that are from different contexts from our own, and they challenge us and they push us to see new things. When I was here, I was really, really influenced by her classes and the real massive leaning towards African literature and a voice being empowered that had been previously marginalized. And so for me, that really kind of frames Waterford as this space that, although it is a bit of a cocoon, and we are slightly bubbled, and when you leave this cocoon, you feel quite, you feel the discomfort a little bit more. It is a space that we can begin to think about who we are, how we want to show up, how we want to be incredibly intentional about the world that we want to create. And also how we can check our privilege. I think that one of the defining moments for me was when we ran a sex education community service program, and we came off the hill and we went to the school, and we had a little program ready, and we were like, did a little drama skit, and at the end, somebody, one of the girls that were at the school that we'd come to, put up her hand and said, yeah, but my aunt is a nurse at the clinic, so I'm not going to get tested. What are you going to say about that? And I went, oh, wow, yeah, look at us. Look at, we've come from this very privileged space. We've not interrogated things clearly enough. We've not sat with it and been present with it. We need to go back and we need to reevaluate. And I think that for me has been a really powerful journey through Waterford. And then also teaching in schools outside of the UWC movement has really shown me, like, there's so much that is powerful here. There's so much that's pertinent here. There's so much that can be utilized to create a world that is maybe more inclusive, but there's also much work still to be done.
All right, it's hard to speak last, but here we are. So I was here around Lawrence Noda's time. Lisa was actually my teacher. Q taught me TOK. So I think that in itself is a very interesting experience. I think, as has been put by everyone else, I think the community service and the deliberate diversity, for lack of a better word, has been the biggest thing for me. And I look back at Noda times, and Moya said something about having those hard conversations. And I think the organic diversity happens naturally. Of course, you're going to be in a different environment and interact with people outside of those you'd interact with yourself. But I think one of the very, very few times that I was called into Mr. Noda's office is he was very intentional about diversity. And sometimes it wasn't as organic as we would like it to be. And I think an important conversation, even with Michael Stern's version, is this idea that even if something happens and we want it to look a specific way, it's never going to happen automatically. Some of those things almost, if you're a student, almost feel like they're forced. So I remember we came in from Form 5, there was a lot of us Swazis, we'd come in through the school, we were in Form 2 together, some of us had gone to primary together, so we knew each other. And so we'd find ourselves having those conversations with each other by the rock or in the library and things like that. And I think it was twice that the first time he called us, he was like, you know what, we recognize that it's nice to speak Siswati and have your jokes, it's fine, but make an effort, interact with other people, interact with new students. And it was like, okay, cool, we'll do it. So that was it. It was a short conversation, we moved on. And then the second time I think he called us into his office, it was like, this is the second time. It was a harder conversation. Mr. Wells was there. It was kind of scary. But I think for me, one of the big biggest memories from that is this idea that we can always assume that diversity is easy, but it's not. From a student perspective, from a staff perspective, it's not easy. And Stern did the hard things. And I think for me, the thing that then comes out of my memories of Waterford is sometimes you have to do the hard things, regardless of how uncomfortable you are. You need to try to be inclusive, regardless of how hard it is. And I think at the same time, there was a memory where we had a teacher that we liked and we wrote a petition. It didn't really work out the way that we wanted. But again, this environment was a place where you felt like if there's something that I feel strongly about, this is a space where I can share my ideas. This is a place where I can speak to someone and they can listen. Whether they take my proposal or not is a different situation. But I think for me, diversity said, you know what, be intentional about being diverse, be intentional about doing the hard things when it comes to inclusivity, and also be intentional about having those hard conversations regardless of the outcome.
Thank you so much. Our final question, what recommendations do you have to sustain the vision for another 62 years?
Yes, thanks. I'll go first. So I think one, hard conversations. I think that speaking now from a staff angle, I think we have those hard conversations, but I think we as an institution need to recognize that what we're doing, regardless of the new age or it looks like it's the in thing to be diverse, those hard conversations are hard and they have to be had. And then it's moving from those conversations and taking things not just from ideas, because Sten was a visionary and he had a lot of ideas, but we wouldn't be here if he hadn't actually gotten up and done or acted on the ideas that he had. So I think having those hard conversations, having the ideas, and then implementing what we think, regardless of the backlash sometimes, because it's going to come. And this is how this institution was founded in the first place. So I think for me, that is what propels us forward.
Okay, so I think that we are an institution that is based on a very set value system. We belong to a UWC network that is making a lot of impact in the world. But there are still things that we can be intentional about on this campus and in this educational space. So, for instance, being very, very, very intentional about mental health. Right? Changing the world starts with the inner work. How are we making sure that we are supporting students who come from very diverse backgrounds and very complex situations, and we are helping them to feel grounded and safe and supported in this environment? How are we intentionally decolonizing the curriculum and continuously? And re-evaluating and re-engaging with those systemic issues that are embedded in a lot of educational institutions. How are we ensuring that we are at the forefront of building with intention to create safe spaces, but also to empower marginalized voices across the continent? And what are we doing to ensure that we are building frameworks that stretch beyond Eswatini, or as also into the communities of Eswatini, right? How do we make choices that honor the ancestral space that we are sitting in right now and the gift that it's given to us for the last many years? How are we ensuring that the intention of Waterford, which was founded in opposition to injustice and human rights violations, continues to be something that drives the choices that we make amongst each other and amongst how we engage as a community at large? I think that simply being diverse is not enough, right? We need to be doing a lot of the active piecework and ensuring that it's current and it's engaging with what's happening in the world right now. The world right now is extremely complex, and we want to be making sure that we are laying the groundwork for young people to move into that complex space and to do so in ways that they feel empowered and strong, but also not that they carry the world of having to change or fix the world all by themselves. How can we as a community mobilize and create frameworks that essentially do see some kind of long-term impact, and it isn't just a cocoon kind of space? So of course we know that people leave this campus and do amazing things, but how can we harness that even more? And how can we ensure that we are part of that harnessing and intentionality?
Thank you. Right, what recommendations do I have to sustain the vision for another 62 years? On the one side, I think I will concur with both Nosimilo and Moya in that we should encourage having the hard conversations. When something is felt to be wrong, to have the courage and also feel that you're in a space that is safe enough to voice these issues and have the conversation about it. It also means as teachers in class, we should be prepared to be challenged. And I might be challenged and be speechless, but at least, you know, think about it and bring it up next lesson or so when I've meditated over it. That kind of thing is useful, that students feel that that's being taken seriously, and yeah, and they should also then in return be taking us seriously as a consequence. And the second one is sort of a more idiosyncratic one, where I come up with the idea of recognizing integrity in everyone. And that's not easy. How do I learn to trust the untrustworthy without making or feeling myself to be completely vulnerable? And this is something that Michael Stern really could do. He could inspire trust in people who might have seemed intrinsically untrustworthy. How to do this? I'm not sure, but I think it's something that we can keep in mind as recognizing that everybody has integrity, and somehow, even when they don't seem to, and being able to nurture it.
Lovely, thanks. So I think, yeah, just to build on, I think, what's been said, I think in order to keep a vision alive, especially like in an institution, you have to make sure that the most important aspects of that vision are built into the systems, are built into your programs, into the rhythms and rituals of the community. CAS, for example, has been part of our timetable like since I was in Form 5. Like we used to spend every Friday afternoon off campus at the government hospital, and we can still say today that it's very central to who we are. Every Thursday morning, the IB1s go off campus to do CAS. Every Tuesday morning, the IB2s are involved in CAS, and we've deliberately made that part of our teaching and learning, part of our program. So I think, how are you embedding the vision into the systems and structures of the institution? Because I think the ultimate purpose of institutions is to preserve, to keep things going for longer than we will live. Michael Stern started this school 60 years ago, yet we're all still following that same path, and that is because that is the purpose of institutions, is to keep these things going. I'd say the second thing is around the amazing students that we have that come through these gates. So keep Mr. Storer in admissions, like that's gonna keep us going. But I mean, I'm so proud to have taught both Moya and Nosi, and just to hear them talk today, and now they've come back as teachers, and just keeping that cycle going. So how do we keep our students connected? How do I know that Sinaya is going to come back and walk these halls and teach in our classrooms and sort of ignite, embed that connection with this institution and everything that it is and everything that it can be in our students, so that they come back and they want to keep it going and keep it alive. And then I think the last thing I'll say is that as Waterford, we need to remain embedded in the community that we are part of, that gives us a sense of place. Our Mage Zimbabwe's are from Mpulanjeni, from Stuart Shini. Bongani Gamedze he worked in the tuck shop when I was in Form 2. Dumisa has seen me grow up and become a teacher and now become a deputy principal. These are people that are part of the surrounding communities, but are this community. And I think making sure that we keep our connection as Waterford with the communities that surround us, that's where our staff comes from. That's where our institutional memory comes from, that's where our connection with this country comes from, I think is really, really important and what will keep the vision going.
Thank you so much. Can you please give a round of applause to our panelists? Are there any questions for the panelists? If you have a question, please just raise your hand and we'll have an usher bring a mic to you. Okay, there's a question online that asks, what values do you think Waterford should impart in students before they leave?
I think that a very strong sense of self, a very strong sense of where they have come from, and how they have engaged with people who have opened their eyes as they move forward, and a sense of their place in the world and how their ethics align with a future that we would like to collectively create that is built on communal upliftment, empowering indigenous knowledge, and really reframing from us and them to how we can all exist in cohesion, in a more united front. So I think that if we are able to help our students do even a little bit of that, and them do a little bit of that for us, because each time we meet students, they change us, and that's kind of the biggest perk of the job, then I think that would be really, really amazing.
Okay, thank you so much. Before our panelists return to the seats, I would like to invite Mrs. Otula to present them with a gift. Oh. Again to our panelists and our speaker. As we come to a close of this year's Michael Stern Lecture, I want to highlight one of the most prominent aspects of Mrs. Nje's talk. One of the reasons Stern became so disillusioned with the inequalities of the education system was from direct experience teaching children of the wealthy and elite. He had a vision that no child should be denied entry to Waterford on the grounds that they could not afford school fees. This vision is at the heart of Waterford, as mentioned in the talk, and each principal has remained committed to expanding and strengthening our socio-economic diversity. On behalf of the college, I would like to extend my immense gratitude to all of the institutions and individuals who make this vision a reality. We are grateful for the continued scholarship program support from the Staff Scholarship Fund, our trust, the Waterford School Trust in Europe, American Friends of Waterford Kamhlaba, and Waterford Kamhlaba Foundation of Southern Africa. We thank all individual donors, corporates, the International Office, and UWC's most extensive fund, Dare to Dream, which you may know as Shelby Davis Scholarship Program. They have been responsible for funding the further education for thousands of Waterford alumni. These scholarships, this education, truly has the power to completely change the lives of our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. 22% of our students here are on scholarship. We currently have a running program called Kamhlaba Challenge, where alumni participate in creative activities to raise funds for the WK Scholarship Fund. Through this challenge alone, we have been able to take students from rural areas and war zones, from Form 1 all the way to IB2. We thank you all for your continued support and welcome any new partners and donors. If you'd like to make a contribution, monthly or once off, please visit our school website. Once again, I'd like to thank our speaker, Mrs. Nje, our panelists, our musicians, I think they've gone though, to the Advancement Office and the CMG for putting together this fantastic event. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your undivided attention. It's been a pleasure hosting you all this evening. This marks the end of the Michael Stern Lecture of 2025. To our audience online, bye. And to our in-person guests, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. From here, our ushers will guide you to the staff room where we'll cut Waterford's birthday cake.